Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you as always for stopping by. Let me start with a photograph of Donald Trump welcoming the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta in the Oval Office yesterday. That's from Jerome Cartillier. Macro thoughts: the Nasdaq from 1,400 to over 8,000 in less than 10 years. That's from J.S. Blockland, and an incredible story when you think about it. The dot-com crash, and then like a phoenix rising from the ashes. And it really returns remain correlated to this whole technology theme that we've seen play out over the last 2 decades, let's say. Dollar index has not even hit support yet, and crash callers abound. This is from Chi-Girl. This is her chart. I'm looking to buy it closer to 94. For now, it seems everyone's gotten optimistic after the Mexico announcement that Trump is going to sort of sit down and deal with everybody, I think. And then regarding the dollar, I still think the dollar's got a lot further to go, and I wrote about it in a piece called Currency Puzzles and a Weaponized Dollar. Home thoughts: morning view of Turnot River in Samburu. This is from Roots Adventure. It's quite amazing up there in the northern part of Kenya. And I've been enjoying reading books from the Muthaiga Club, because they got all these older books of people who actually, mostly on foot, walked all across northern Kenya, and it's wonderful to read all these years later. This is a cheetah in a tree in the Masai Mara. Unusual occurrence. Normally it's a leopard in a tree. That photograph's by Nick Brandt. Political reflections: UN report details devastating cruelty against the Rohingya population in Myanmar's Rakhine province. This report was issued yesterday. It was a flash report. Documents mass gang rape killings, including of babies and young children, brutal beatings, disappearances, and other serious human rights violations by the country's security forces. The devastating cruelty to which these Rohingya children have been subjected is unbearable. What kind of hatred could make a man stab a baby crying out for his mother's milk, and for the mother to witness this murder while she is being gang raped by the very security forces who should be protecting her, said the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zaid Rad Al Hussein. OHCHR noted that more than half of the women its human rights team interviewed reported having suffered rape or other forms of sexual violence. I take you back to Bob Geldof, and the link is there on Rich Wrap-Ups. Aung Suu Kyi, he says, took the greatest prize humans can give to another, and then becomes one of the great ethnic cleansers on the planet. Ken Roth, she has not used her de facto position as head of government nor her moral authority to stem or prevent the unfolding atrocities against the Rohingya. She is indeed a disgrace, as is the current situation. Image-conscious China points new global propaganda czar. China's increasingly image-conscious government has appointed a trusted member of the ruling Communist Party to head up its international propaganda operation. Former top internet regulator Zhu Lin will be in charge of efforts to portray China as a progressive force for good in the world at a time when it's facing criticism over its allegedly unfair trading practices, human rights abuses, and militarization of island claims in the South China Sea. And this goes back to a tremendous propaganda effort, but what it did, it's the myth of Xi Jinping, and this is the strongman conundrum. If you are the strong man and you place yourself on a pedestal, then you own the problem. And I think it's that connection between a weaker economy, a very effective Trump strategy to rattle Xi Jinping, and suddenly Xi Jinping owns the problem. 9th of July, I wrote Tariff Wars, who blinks first? Bloomberg is saying the US trade war with China is about to get uglier. After a long hot summer spent weighing risks and firing warning shots, the hawks and President Trump's administration have gained the upper hand. We're facing an escalating trade war over the next few months, said David Dollar of the Brookings Institution. Not enough focus has been put on China, and that's been for a long time, the president told legislators gathered at the White House on Thursday to mark the passage of a law giving yet more powers to the already powerful Committee on Foreign Investment in the US, which can block acquisitions on national security grounds. And essentially, I think the target of all this is China, actually, once you look through the mist of the dust and the smoke. FT Confidential says its measure of consumer sentiment in China fell sharply in August to its lowest level in 16 months. Earliest indicators show China's economy continued to decelerate in August, David Inglis. And as I said, in August, beginning of August, President Trump seems to be relishing his financial warfare strategies. He has Khamenei on the run. Maduro in Venezuela has been attacked by a remote-controlled drone, and now has devalued the currency by 97%, and Xi, I said then, looks ever so fragile. 5th of March, I was speaking about Xi being president for life, and that's exactly what I mean by elevating yourself and putting yourself atop a pedestal. Mexican President Enrique Pena Nieto told President Trump he wants to celebrate the new trade understanding with the US, to toast a good toast with tequila, of course. The Mexican peso is the best performing major emerging market currency this year. That's from Eurasia Group. So I think I'm at a loss to know whether anything has really changed, whether it was just a change of name after Obama was so hated by Trump, he just, reinvent the name, you reinvent the relationship. But that's said a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but clearly this is a positive development. And that's why the peso is the best performing emerging market currency this year. Markets are now betting that Canada will stay in NAFTA, don't call it that, as Trump's trade deal with Mexico mounts the pressure. Trudeau spoke with Trump on Monday with the Prime Minister's office, describing it as a constructive call, because others haven't been. Trudeau looks forward to talks this week with a view to a successful conclusion of negotiations. Very interesting essay in MIT Tech Review, how social media took us from Tahrir Square to Donald Trump. To understand how digital technologies went from instruments for spreading democracy to weapons for attacking it, you have to look beyond the technologies themselves. The young people had energy, smarts, humor, and smartphones, and we expected the region's fate would turn in favor of their democratic demands. Power always learns, and powerful tools always fall into its hands. This is a hard lesson of history, but a solid one. A key issue for me was how micro-targeting, especially on Facebook, could be used to wreak havoc with the public sphere. It was true that social media let dissidents know they were not alone, but online micro-targeting could also create a world in which you wouldn't know what messages your neighbors were getting, or how the ones aimed at you were being tailored to your desires and vulnerabilities. Digital platforms allowed communities to gather and form in new ways, but they also dispersed existing communities. Those that had watched the same TV news and read the same newspapers. Important point, I think. Old gatekeepers failed in many ways, and no doubt that failure helped fuel mistrust and doubt. But the new gatekeepers succeed by fueling mistrust and doubt, as long as the clicks keep coming. Facebook's original mission statement, which the social network changed in 2017 after a backlash against its role in spreading misinformation, was to make the world more open and connected. It turns out that this isn't necessarily an unalloyed good. Open to what? And connected how? The need to ask those questions is perhaps the biggest lesson of all. Please go back and have a look at the piece I wrote in December 2016 called "We Have a DV8 Tomahawk" when I was addressing some of these things. Moving on to Saudi Arabia, the king is obsessed with the idea of how history will judge him. Will he be the king who sold Aramco, who sold Palestine? The second source said, this is a Reuters report, saying it was the king who killed the IPO idea dead. In late June, the king sent a message to his Diwan, or administrative office, demanding that the IPO be called off. Three sources said the king's decision is final. The second source said, whenever he says no, there is no budging. I wrote about Saudi Arabia in November last year, and I was speaking about the paranoia in the palaces in Saudi Arabia is real and existential. This is the Iranian threat. And then I was saying, in all the history books I've read, it's probably wisest to operate on one front, not two, and certainly not three. I was talking about Saudi Arabia acting on three different fronts. The desperate impulse to act is also up against a 4-year deadline. The speed of decline in FX reserves produces a 48-month shelf life. In that same piece, I was saying this is an unprecedented moment for the House of Saud, and the most dangerous one I can recall. Nothing to see here, says The Economist. Secretary Pompeo, in a rebuttal of a comment that came out of the Iranians, says the Islamic Republic of Iran does not control the Strait of Hormuz. The strait is an international waterway. The United States will continue to work with our partners to ensure freedom of navigation and free flow of commerce in international waterways. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar pushing higher, 116.81. Rebounded a great deal, Jamal. We tumbled through 115.15, and then suddenly we've come back, cleared 115, now at 116.81. Dollar index 94.82, Japanese yen 111.18, Swiss franc 0.9802, that's strengthened as well. The pound 128.92, that's made headway. Australian dollar, let's see where we are on that particular, 0.7340, so recovering from that sell-off related to the toppling of Malcolm Turnbull. India rupee, that's not recovering, 70.115. South Korean won, 1109.59. Brazilian real, 407.84. Egyptian pound, which has become a very solid store of value, high alpha, low beta, 17.9023. South African rand, 14.2067. This is a chart of the dollar index from Pinecone Macro. 94 remains key, and I'm looking to buy near there. On Monday, Morgan Stanley recommended buying the euro dollar at the market with a target of 121 and a stop at 115. A good trade. Euro dollar, this is from T Commodity. He was also calling it higher, 116.83. Looks set to rebound over 117 in my opinion. Tesla bonds due in 2025 are trading near their all-time lows. That's Lisa Abramovitz. Cowen out with a scathing note on Tesla, underperformed, price target $200. Have a read of what they're saying. This is interesting. NASDAQ year-to-date attribution, still historically very narrow attribution, with mega caps doing the very heavy lifting. That's a fact, Tommy Thornton. Gold, let's take a look with Vladimir Putin buying. We're at 1211.50, having recovered from below 1200, where we were for quite a few seconds. Crude oil, $68.70. That too has had a very strong and violent rebound since that sell-off. Emerging markets, MSCI Emerging Market Future powers ahead after US reaches NAFTA deal with Mexico, and of course the dollar continued to trade lower. But the emerging market future is still 2% below the level of August 1st. Another positive sign for the world's best performing major equity market, that's India, the Bombay Sensex. Venezuela's stock market index is up 30,000% this year. That's David Inglis, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because of course the devaluation completely erodes all of that. And that's why I said Venezuela is the H, and there is no honest way to explain it, because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. Those are folks in Caracas, fortunately. Look at these spikes. This is the Turkish lira. Makes it difficult to believe we have seen the end of the Turkish lira weakening. The problem is they've strangulated the offshore market quite effectively, so you could get very stuck. 13th of August, I wrote a piece called Cold Turkey. Listen. Zambia's Eurobonds have lost 10% this month, more than any of the 75 countries in the Bloomberg Barclays Emerging Markets Dollar Sovereign Bond Index. That's extended their decline to 23% this year and sent spreads over treasuries soaring to more than 1,000 basis points. Being downgraded twice this past month, S&P Global Ratings cut the foreign currency rating to B-, 6 steps into junk territory. The yield fell 1 basis point to 13.86% on Monday, though they're still up about 740 basis points in 2018. Obviously, they're trying to hold off from going to the IMF. This gets worse before it gets any better. I think Lungu's in denial, and therefore, the longer you delay it, the more extreme you're going to see price action develop. Theresa May seeks to match Emmanuel Macron's influence in Africa. This is the Financial Times, travelling with her on the first UK prime ministerial trip to sub-Saharan Africa for 5 years as an entourage of 29 business leaders, including Bill Winters, the chief executive of Standard Chartered, LSE head David Schwimmer. She will describe African states as on the cusp of a transformative role in the global economy. France's Emmanuel Macron has visited 11 countries on his 9 trips to the continent since becoming president last May, most recently Nigeria, a country at the heart of the British strategic interests in Africa. Chinese leaders have also regularly visited. And then saying, there are a few templates for a future deal beyond the Brexit transition. South Africa's recent EU trade deal focused on goods, not the services, in which the UK would probably seek to expand its exports. There is also realism about the size of the continent's economies. The 3 countries that Mrs. May is visiting may well be Africa's powerhouses, but the combined nominal GDP of Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa barely matches the Netherlands. Mrs. May talks of inserting post-Brexit Britain into a more prosperous, growing and trading Africa. However, compared to existing trade with the EU, Leon said that even South Africa, for now, is infinitesimal. She is, of course, visiting Cape Town first, and that took me back. My mind then looped back to another speech which was delivered to the Parliament in Cape Town, but that was on February the 3rd, 1960, and by a British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan. And this, of course, as the wind of change is blowing through this continent, whether we like it or not, this growth of national consciousness is a political fact. I said Africa is not a country, and it's a ubiquitous meme, and at its core is an absolute truth. The continent is non-linear. Kinshasa is not Addis Ababa. It's not Lagos, it's not Pretoria. However, a wind of change is blowing through this continent, in my view. Bloomberg says, seeking Brexit friends, UK aims to be Africa's top investor. The UK aims to become the top foreign investor in Africa by 2022, Prime Minister Theresa May will say on Tuesday, as she seeks to strengthen Britain's global economic ties to show it's open for business after Brexit. As Prime Minister of a trading nation whose success depends on global markets, I want to see strong African economies that British companies can do business with in a free and fair fashion, she said. She will say, whether through creating new customers for British exporters or opportunities for British investors, our integrated global economy means healthy African economies are good news for British people as well as African people. By 2022, I want the UK to be the G7's #1 investor in Africa, with Britain's private sector companies taking the lead in investing the billions that will see African economies growing by trillions. It is the private sector that is the key to driving that growth, transforming labour markets, opening up opportunity and unleashing entrepreneurial spirit. And the UK has the companies that can invest in and trade with Africa to do just this. United Nations figures put annual UK investment in the continent at $55 billion, ahead of France's $49 billion and second to the US on 57 billion. Ugandan High Court has granted bail to the lawmaker Bobi Wine, who was charged with treason over his alleged role in the stoning of President Yoweri Museveni's convoy this month, taking back to November 2014. And Ouagadougou was my article was about Ouagadougou, and what I said then, and I think it applies now. What's clear is that a very young, very informed, very connected African youth demographic, many characterize it as a demographic dividend, but for beautiful Blaze it turned into a demographic terminator, is set to alter the existing equilibrium between the rulers and the subjects, and a rebalancing has begun. EXX Africa, Uganda opposition momentum drives higher risk of disruptive and violent protests by urban youths. I think it's extremely precarious, and counterintuitively it's Bobi Wine who looks politically muscular after the recent events. The Chinese model is failing Africa, says the Financial Times. Leaders from across Africa will gather in Beijing next week for the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. This triennial summit is where China makes the headline-grabbing aid and finance commitments that underpin its role as Africa's most important economic partner. Nearly a decade ago, China surpassed the US to become Africa's largest trading partner. Last year, its two-way trade at $170 billion, 4 times larger than US-Africa commerce. But this is part of the thinking that, the model's not working, and it isn't. These are enormous projects built on future earnings, which are nowhere to be seen at the moment. Why Ethiopians believe their new prime minister is a prophet. At 6 a.m. when Gautama Havra arrived at the Target Arena in Minneapolis, the line for tickets already snaked around the block. Within hours, 20,000 fans had packed the venue. People around me were crying, says Gautama, a 28-year-old medical laboratory scientist. Seeing this was a dream come true. Abiy is nothing like those who came before him. He hugs politicians in public, takes selfies with fans, and doesn't just smile for the cameras. He beams. His message to Ethiopia's ethnic groups has been, take down the wall, build the bridge. In Minnesota, he asked the crowd to medema. Literally, he added to one another. If you want the pride of your generation, he said, then you must decide that Oromos, Amaras, Wolatais, Garejis, Sitis are all equally Ethiopian. This is a revolutionary message. For a country like Ethiopia, Abiy is 1 in a million, says Getter. He really could be one of the greatest leaders that Africa ever saw. You will recall I said, after he'd been there for about 90 or so days, that they represent the most consequential arrival of an African politician on the African stage since Mandela walked out of prison, blinking in the sunlight. My piece over the weekend was about how the Rand is caught up in the crossfire. And I was saying Jacob Zuma used to regale friends with a rendition of Bring Me My Machine Gun, and that President Trump, the linguistic and financial warfare specialist, has the machine gun, and the Rand is in the line of fire. I also did a short video clip of that article if you're interested. South African all shares up 0.25% this year. It's recovered a bit actually after that sell-off, 10-cent related sell-off. Dollar Rand, I think, is a big sell right here, right now. 14.1859. Egyptian pound, safe haven in a turbulent world, 17.8943. Nigerian all share down 7.67% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange up 11.12% year to date. Tanzania seals a mega gas deal with Uganda, but who's funding it, asks All Africa. Flotus Melania and I were honoured to welcome the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru, and Mrs. Margaret Kenyatta to the White House today, tweeted Trump. David Ndeje picked up this photograph of Flotus, Uhuru Kenyatta, and the First Lady. There is also a press release, White House Office of the Press Secretary for immediate release, joint statement from President Trump and President Kenyatta. The leaders resolved to elevate the relationship to a strategic partnership, talking about counterterrorism. As democracies committed to a rule-based international order, the United States and Kenya share a common vision for free and open societies. This includes global freedom of navigation, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. Interesting. That's what I've been talking about, that Indian Ocean economy, how it matches, how it fits into this global geopolitical situation that we're looking at. This and nearly $900 million in other commercial deals and engagements announced during the visit are expected to create thousands of American and Kenyan jobs. Well, you were here on a very special day, said Trump to Kenyatta. Everything I said is going to happen. It ends up happening. As you picked a good day to come, we're in a very good mood. Kenyatta said he hoped Trump would share the wealth with his country. We'll bring that over to Kenya, Trump joked. Trump also pointed to what he called a massive roadway infrastructure project in Kenya as a sign of the country's ties. That's the Bechtel superhighway between Nairobi and Mombasa. We're working on a major infrastructure project, a massive roadway in Kenya, Trump said. Take you back to January 2013 when I wrote a piece that rode Mombasa-Nairobi. The Nairobi-Mombasa road arrows into immensities, and it's impossible to believe it retains a near mystical hold on it. My imagination connects me to my childhood and beyond. Have a read. The determination with which Kenya strives to create better lives for its children is a shared compassion with the United States, it floaters. I'm very much looking forward to visiting Africa. US-Kenya trade talks, Trump seeks to counter China's growing role. That was a clip on Al Jazeera in which I spoke as well. Have a listen. Kenya shilling at 100.805, second best performing currency in the world year to date. I&M Bank has reported that first half earnings per share increased 11.705%. Loans and advances to customers grew 12.64% to 162.82 billion. Interestingly, bucked the trend of buying more government securities. That was down 7.9454%. Deposits from customers were up an eye-watering 30.565% to 210.89 billion shillings. That's interesting. Revenue clocked to 6.299% gain. Profit before tax was up 8.74%. Profit for the period up 12.77%. EPS up 11.705%. If you go to Rich Wrap-Ups, you'll see, because they hold a bunch of things, I&M Rwanda, have a look at what I pulled it out and put it on Rich Wrap-Ups. Look, the big growth in customer deposits, double-digit EPS gains is a net positive outcome in my view. TransCentury reported first half earnings per share was negative 1 shilling and 36 cents. Turnover was down 23.713%. Gross profit, actually they made a profit, 625 million they're saying. EBITDA was positive 74.293 million. That was versus a loss of 440.514 million last time. So they're still reporting a loss, but considerably less, 684 million versus a 1.04 billion. Negative equity position of 784 million. But they're talking of a gross margin improvement in this period. And if you look at those earnings, they seem to have based out where they are. They're also saying, interestingly, that the value of the equity they're holding in other companies is worth a few billion shillings and worth more than the negative equity position in the share price. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it.